There is someone in your life who has been hiding something deep in their heart for much longer than they would ever feel safe admitting. This has lasted far longer than you probably realized, far longer than you imagined. They did not wake up one morning and suddenly stop feeling what they felt for you. They did not truly move on the way their actions may have made it seem. What really happened was quieter than that. Slower, more painful. They pushed their real emotions down because they did not know what else to do with them. They buried those feelings. They kept them out of sight. They told themselves silence was easier, safer, cleaner. But feelings buried in the dark do not disappear. They stay there. They grow heavy, day by day, week by week, month by month. They wait, and then one day all of that weight rises at once. That is where this message is coming from now. Not from peace, not from confidence, not even from courage. It is coming from fear, from uncertainty, from the painful realization that too much time may already be gone. Something shifted inside them very recently, in a real way, in a way they could not ignore. Maybe they saw something that brought you back into their mind. Maybe they heard your name. Maybe life finally got quiet enough for the truth to become louder than all the distractions they used to keep it down. Whatever caused it, it woke them up. And once they woke up, one thought hit hard. They may lose you in a way that cannot be fixed later. Stay with this, because that truth changed everything. It did not arrive in the middle of a busy day. It came late at night, in the silence, in the stillness, in those empty moments when there is nowhere left to run. When the noise of everyday life finally faded, the silence started asking questions they could no longer avoid. Their phone felt too quiet. Other people started feeling shallow, surface level, empty. And in that stillness, they had to face what they had been escaping for so long. Nobody else carries what you carry. Nobody else listens the way you listened. Nobody else understood them without asking for endless explanations. Nobody else gave comfort in that calm, balanced way that never felt controlling and never felt cold. When that truth became clear, urgency started building inside them. But listen closely, because this part matters. That urgency is not made of love alone. It is also made of fear. Fear of losing something rare forever. Fear of losing something that cannot simply be replaced. If they could speak to you right now with no pride, no mask, no excuses, they would probably say something very simple. They should have done more. They should have moved sooner. They believed they had more time than they actually did. They assumed your care, your patience, your understanding would still be there whenever they were finally ready. But silence has its own consequences. Silence can wound. Silence can create distance that grows slowly until one day it feels almost impossible to cross. They are starting to understand that doing nothing is still a choice, and every choice creates a result. That choice costs something between the two of you. They carry guilt now. Guilt for not showing up when it mattered. Guilt for staying quiet when honesty was needed. Guilt for not being brave enough to say what should have been said when it could still have made a real difference. Back then, distance felt safer, silence felt easier, avoidance felt manageable. But avoiding pain does not protect anyone. It only delays the price, and the longer it is delayed, the heavier it becomes. And this is where it gets deeper, because what they are dealing with now is not lack of feeling, it is too much feeling, with no idea how to hold it. They did not struggle because they felt too little. They struggled because they felt more than they knew how to handle. Opening their heart to you would have meant accepting uncertainty. It would have meant risking rejection. It would have meant facing parts of themselves they were not ready to meet. So instead of listening to what their heart was saying, they let fear make the important choices. They let pride speak louder than softness. Then they let silence speak louder than both. And now those choices have turned into consequences they can no longer look away from. There is another part of this that sits heavily on their chest. They can feel that you are not the same person you used to be. Something in your energy has changed. Something in your presence feels different now. Your tone is different. Even your silence feels different. You may still care. You may still have feelings connected to what once existed. But you are no longer chasing answers. You are no longer repeating yourself, hoping something will finally change. You are no longer standing in that painful place where confusion controlled everything. That change in you unsettles them more than they expected. Why? Because they depended on your patience much more than they ever admitted. They leaned on your kindness. They leaned on your willingness to stay. They leaned on your understanding while keeping their own heart protected behind walls they rarely lowered. Deep down, they assumed you would always be there, waiting, understanding, forgiving, accepting. They never fully imagined that one day you would choose yourself. But you did, and they feel that shift now, clearly, quietly, strongly. That quiet choice you made speaks louder than any fight ever could, because arguments still carry attachment. Arguments still carry emotional investment. But your calmness now feels different. Your calmness feels like acceptance. And that possibility forces them to face something they never wanted to face. The possibility that your life may continue forward without them. Let that sink in. Because for them, that thought is not small. It follows them into the late hours. It sits with them in empty rooms. It shows up when they least expect it. And it does not leave quickly. For a long time they believed there would always be another chance. Another talk. Another opening. Another day to explain themselves. Another moment to finally say what stayed trapped inside. Now they are no longer sure those chances still exist. That uncertainty follows them everywhere. In the evening. In quiet spaces. In those sudden moments when a memory returns without warning. And the memories are not always dramatic. Most of the time they are simple, ordinary. A laugh, a phrase, a look, a small moment where they felt understood without needing to perform. Those are the memories that hit hardest now, because they remind them of something rare. They remind them of being seen. They remind them of being understood. They remind them of a connection that never truly left their heart, no matter how hard they tried to act like it had. So now they stand between two heavy emotions, regret for what they did not do, and fear of what may never come back. Neither gives them peace. Part of them wants to reach out right away and say everything. Another part is still afraid. Afraid of your response. Afraid too much time has passed. Afraid that the version of you they once knew has already grown beyond the place where they left things unfinished. Still, the truth keeps pressing forward. It keeps asking to be acknowledged, because some connections leave a mark that distance cannot erase. Some people stay present in the heart, even when they are no longer part of daily life. And whether they are ready to say that out loud or not, that is the reality they are beginning to face. For the first time in a long while, they are not only focused on protecting themselves from hard feelings, now they are being forced to look at the cost of staying silent. They are being forced to see what fear has taken from them. And even more than that, they are being forced to understand the value of what they had only after they started feeling the emptiness left by its absence. And once that kind of truth arrives, it is hard to go back to pretending. Keep listening, because this is where the truth becomes even more direct. What they are afraid of losing is not only you as a person. They are afraid of losing the rare experience of being seen without being judged. They are afraid of losing that emotional safety they never fully admitted they needed. They are afraid of losing that unusual space where they could feel understood without being pushed past their limits before they were ready. Only now are they starting to see that not every bond can be repaired after it has been neglected too long. Not every real connection can be replaced by somebody new. Some people leave a mark that cannot be copied. That realization follows them everywhere now. It shows up when life gets quiet. It rises when they try to move on but cannot find solid ground under their own emotions. It returns whenever they compare someone else to you and feel a difference they cannot explain away. That is why the pressure inside them keeps growing. This is not really about control. It is not about trying to win you back like a possession. It is about realizing that time is no longer endless. They can feel a door slowly closing, not with anger, not with dramatic final words, quietly, softly, almost in the background. But a quiet closing can be the most serious kind. Because when a door closes gently inside someone's heart, it does not usually open again easily. They want to reach out, they want to find the right words, they want to explain honestly, they want to offer an apology that feels real instead of empty. But fear interrupts each attempt before it fully begins. Fear keeps asking if it is already too late. Fear keeps whispering that maybe you do not care the way you once did. Fear keeps reminding them that showing their real self could end in rejection. That thought cuts deeply, so they hesitate. They hold the words back. They build messages in their mind, then erase them before they are ever sent. They imagine whole conversations that never happen. And while they delay, the pressure inside keeps building. No release, no peace, only wait, and what happens next depends on much more than emotion. This is not a promise that everything will suddenly heal. It is not a fantasy. It is not some soft story where every wound disappears the second truth is spoken. It is more like an honest confession carried across distance and time. They are not pretending all the damage is already fixed. They are not pretending they suddenly found every answer. What they are finally admitting, even if only to themselves, is that treating you like you would always be there was unfair. They did not understand your value until they felt the emptiness left by your absence. And when truth arrives this late, it hurts more, because it comes with the fear that something deeply important may already be gone. But what this means for you matters more than what it means for them. Pay close attention here. This is not telling you to wait. It is not asking you to forgive before your heart is ready. It is not asking you to walk back into the same uncertainty and pain you already survived. It is simply showing the truth they never knew how to express through their actions. You mattered to them more than they were able to say. Your absence feels louder now than your presence ever seemed when you were there all the time. What existed between you was real. Even if they handled it badly, the real power now belongs to you and whatever you choose next. Real power does not move just because someone else suddenly feels desperate. Desperation is not the same as readiness. A person can feel regret and still not be capable of offering the consistency, care, and emotional responsibility that a real relationship needs. Right now they are sitting with the consequences of who they chose to be when it mattered most. And consequences have a way of telling the truth with brutal clarity. They remove excuses. They strip away comforting stories. They show what silence actually cost. Recently they have been replaying old memories, small moments, forgotten moments, things they once thought did not matter much. But through the lens of loss, those moments feel different now, heavier, sharper, more alive. And that replay is teaching them something they can no longer ignore. They remember the little things you did without needing praise. They remember how you checked on them for no special reason. They remember how you could sense a shift in their mood before they said a word. They remember how you held yourself together even when they pulled away. They remember how you kept reaching for understanding instead of rushing toward blame. Those memories weigh on them because they reveal something painful. You met them at a depth they had not yet reached in themselves. At that time, they stepped back from the growth, honesty and responsibility that real closeness requires. For a long time they convinced themselves that distance was protection. Now that same distance feels less like safety and more like exposure. Even through the silence between you, they still feel seen by you. But your silence has changed. It used to feel temporary. Now it feels lasting. It used to feel like a pause. Now it feels like real separation. It used to feel like another talk would come soon. Now it feels like life moving on without any promise of return. That difference affects them more than they would openly admit. They can sense that you are no longer building your emotional world around their uncertainty. You are no longer waiting for them to become ready while you stay in the same painful place. You are no longer arranging your peace around their confusion, and that wakes up another fear inside them. Not only the fear that you might reject them if they finally reach out, but the fear that they no longer hold the same place in your life that they once did. They worry you may have closed the chapter quietly. No fight, No scene, no dramatic ending, just a silent decision to stop carrying what was never fully returned. That kind of calm can shake someone who got used to your availability without truly earning it. And there is another truth slowly forming in them now. You never asked for perfection. You never demanded impossible things. You simply wanted them to show up when it counted. You wanted honesty instead of distance, effort instead of silence, truth instead of emotional hiding. Only now are they starting to understand that difference. You were never asking them to become someone flawless. You were not asking them to have every answer. What you wanted was simpler than that. Harder, yes, but simpler. You wanted presence. You wanted truth. You wanted consistency. You wanted them to live by the values they often said they believed in. Now they can see, with uncomfortable clarity, how many times they chose comfort when courage was what the moment needed. They kept telling themselves they were not ready. They created reasons for their silence, explanations for their distance, justifications for why the timing never seemed right. But readiness does not simply appear one day like a gift. It is a choice, a deliberate one, a choice that must be made and then lived through action. When you offered honesty, love, and real presence, they did not fully meet you there. They held something back. They stayed guarded when openness was needed. And that truth hurts now because the chance no longer feels the same. They can feel the change in you, in your voice, in the speed of your replies, in the fact that you no longer work so hard to prove your value. It lives in the quiet confidence that now exists where longing used to be. That shift changes everything. For so long they mistook your patience for permanent availability. They treated your care like a promise that you would always be there on their timeline. But patience has limits. Eventually, self-respect rises. Eventually, a person becomes clear. Eventually, someone stops putting themselves second. Now they are caught in a difficult inner conflict. They want to move toward you, but they are afraid to begin something they are not sure they can sustain. They want to give a real apology, but they fear making promises they may not be able to keep. They want to rebuild closeness, but they know closeness asks for effort, responsibility, and steady action over time, so they remain suspended, wanting and avoiding, reaching and retreating, pulled toward you, yet still tied to old habits of distance. That is why their energy feels uneven now, restless, conflicted, heavy. Their heart points one way. Their actions still struggle to follow. They imagine finding the courage to come forward. They imagine saying the exact right words. They imagine showing up as a stronger version of themselves. But imagining is easy. Living it is harder. Living it asks for something real. It asks for repeated action. It asks for commitment over time. It asks for proof. And deep down, they know something important now. Words alone will not be enough anymore. You are no longer waiting to be convinced by beautiful sentences. You are watching what stays steady. You are paying attention to what lasts. You are looking for actions that continue after the emotional moment is over. That does not mean you stopped caring. It means you became stronger. You learned how to sit with pain without letting it define you. You faced disappointment. You let reality become clear. They are only beginning that same process now, and timing matters more than they once thought. There is a big difference between growing while love is still safely within reach, and growing only after loss makes everything painfully clear. They know this, even if they cannot yet say it cleanly. They understand that even if they finally speak now, what once existed cannot simply return in the same shape. That realization frightens them because what they miss is not only your presence. They miss the version of you who trusted without hesitation, the version of you who believed with your whole heart, the version of you who gave without holding back. Trust does not instantly come back just because someone finally finds honesty late in the story. Once trust changes, the shape of the whole connection changes with it. So they stand at a crossroads. Behind them is the old comfort of hiding. Behind them is avoidance. Behind them are familiar excuses. Ahead of them is honesty without protection. Ahead of them is vulnerability. Ahead of them is accountability. If they stay where they are, they may lose you completely. If they move forward, they must face the parts of themselves they spent years trying not to see. And that is exactly the battle taking place beneath the surface now. You may have felt it already. You may have sensed it without words, because something real is shifting, and no, you did not imagine it. What you have been sensing is not random confusion. It is not nothing. A real shift is happening underneath everything. Deep below the silence, a quiet truth has been getting stronger. Loss does not always arrive in dramatic ways. Sometimes it comes softly. Sometimes it looks like emotional distance. Sometimes it shows up as a subtle change in someone's energy. Sometimes it is simply the feeling that something important is slowly slipping away. They feel that truth now every time they think about reaching out. They feel it whenever they picture you moving forward with peace. They feel it when they imagine you building a life filled with clarity instead of uncertainty. That image shakes them, not because they want anything bad for you, but because they realize they may no longer hold the place in your future they once assumed would always be theirs. And there is nothing easy they can do to stop that feeling. They cannot stay busy enough forever. They cannot distract themselves forever. For maybe the first time they are facing what fear has truly cost them. For a long time, they resisted their feelings for you. They resisted emotional responsibility. They resisted vulnerability. They resisted softness. They resisted openness. Now all that resistance has nowhere left to go. It has turned into pressure, and the pressure keeps growing. They are not only afraid of losing you, they are afraid of what losing you says about them. At the deepest level, they know this was never only bad timing. It was fear. Fear of being fully seen. Fear of not being enough. Fear of making mistakes. Fear of loving deeply and failing. Fear of not knowing how to care for something meaningful without hurting it. Again and again they go back to moments when they could have spoken, moments when honesty was possible, moments when courage was available, moments when a different choice might have changed everything. At the time those moments looked small. Now they feel huge. Now they return with weight, and every return carries the same question. What if they had been brave when it actually mattered? You did not disappear from this connection all at once. You adjusted slowly to what they kept showing you was available. You stopped carrying the entire emotional weight by yourself. You stopped filling every silence with hope. You stopped giving away your peace just to keep the bond alive. Those changes happened quietly. No big announcement, no dramatic exit, no final speech, just a series of small inner decisions that slowly pulled you back toward yourself. They see that now. They notice you no longer depend on them in the same way. They notice their moods no longer shape your choices the way they once did. They notice their uncertainty no longer controls your emotional world. But what affects them most is your calmness. Calm can feel more final than anger. Anger still reaches outward. Anger still wants to be heard. Anger still carries attachment. Calm carries acceptance. Calm says reality has been faced. Calm says someone may no longer be waiting for things to change. They understand confusion. They understand mixed signals. They understand avoidance. But they do not know what to do with someone who has become clear, steady, and secure. You are no longer waiting to be chosen. You know your worth now, and that changes the entire field. Their fear keeps becoming more layered. They worry that if they come forward, they may reveal they are still not fully ready. They worry they still cannot become the person you need. They worry that you understand them more honestly than they understand themselves. They want you to know their feelings were real. They want to explain the silence. They want to tell you how overwhelmed they were. They want to show you why they pulled away. But they are learning something difficult. Good intentions do not undo pain. And still, the truth keeps pressing on them. Because somewhere inside, they know you did not ask for anything impossible. You asked for presence. You asked for truth. And that simple request has become the mirror they can no longer avoid looking into. They are beginning to see that you never needed perfection from them. You did not need a perfect script. You did not need flawless timing. You did not need grand promises. You simply wanted them to be present when it mattered, honest when it was uncomfortable, consistent when it would have been easier to disappear. That is the lesson now growing heavier inside them every day. They can see how often they reached for comfort when courage was required, how often they delayed because delay felt safer, how often they waited for readiness, as if readiness would magically arrive without a decision. But life does not work that way. Readiness is not found, it is chosen. And when you were offering truth, care, and emotional openness, they did not fully step in. They kept part of themselves hidden. They stayed guarded at the exact moment openness was needed most. That hurts them now because they can feel that the opening is not the same anymore. They sense it in your energy, in your stillness, in the way you no longer try to pull clarity out of confusion, in the way you seem to be standing on your own ground now. For a long time they believed your patience meant forever. They confused your kindness with endless access. They forgot that even the most understanding heart reaches a point where self-respect becomes louder than hope. And now here they are, caught between longing and fear, wanting to move toward you, yet afraid they may not be able to sustain what real closeness requires, wanting to apologize, yet worried an apology without lasting change would only create more hurt, wanting to return, yet knowing return is not enough. What matters now is who they can truly be if they come back. That is why their energy feels unstable. Their heart moves toward you. Their habits pull them back. Their mind builds visions of what they want to say, but action still feels heavy. And that is the truth beneath all of this. They are finally feeling the full weight of what silence costs. Not in theory, in reality, in their body, in their nights, in the future they can now see slipping further away. And that is why this message matters. Not because it asks you to wait, not because it promises some perfect ending. It matters because it reveals what was hidden. It shows that your absence is being felt in a way your presence was never fully valued at the time. It shows that they are finally being forced to face themselves, to face fear, to face what they lost by choosing distance when closeness was possible. They miss the trust you gave freely. They miss the peace of being understood. But now they are learning a hard truth. Missing something is not the same as being ready for it. Regret is not the same as growth. Urgency is not the same as consistency. If they come forward, words alone will not carry much weight anymore. It will take actions, patience, accountability, follow through.